packaging is absolutely beautiful.
It is educational too.
Educational as well.
All mixed together.
Meet Irene Carter, the creator of Slang-A-Lang, a game created in 1969.
Board game on one of her tables, and then I had to ask her, what is this?
Board games often tell a story, and this one is about
Ms. Carter, thanks for doing this with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Well, I have to tell the story. I did a podcast a little while back with the owner of the name of the bookshop.
Willa's
Books. Yes, Willa's Books and Vinyl.
Yes.
She would kill me if she sees this that I forgot the name of the shop. But I did see your board game on on one of her tables, and then I had to ask her, what is this? And she had to explain it to me a little bit, right? I was curious enough for me to buy it. I'll be quite frank to tell you that I haven't played it just yet. I know how busy life can get.
I do.
However, I'm so grateful that I have an opportunity with you to sit down and discuss about this game.
Thank you very much, and thank you for buying it. I hope you'll enjoy it and play it with your friends and
and family as well.
Talk about it, right?
I mean, I would imagine this would be like a perfect game to play around this time of the year.
Yes.
Right?
It's a great game to play this time of year. It accommodates 2 to 15 players, and it is very interesting, it's timely, it's relevant, it's fun, it's engaging, and it is educational too.
Educational as well.
All mixed together. It's a Black history game for everyone. And board games often tell a story, and this one is about a remarkable 50-plus year journey into the Black experience between 1930 and the mid-1980s. And I just recently learned that that's called the New Deal era. I knew that was the time of the Great Depression when the banks failed in '29 and all that, and the Depression went on for years. I also knew that was the time of the Great Migration, when people were just pouring out of the South because of the economic conditions and because they were trying to get to the industrial cities. And this group of people who poured out went into places like Harlem, Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia. They kind of followed the railroads probably and meatpacking and other places, because they were highly motivated to find a better life for themselves and especially to make a better path for their children. And on that, when they arrived at these various destinations, they found challenges, but they found opportunity, and they saw opportunity where maybe others would not have that before or after. And I'm just fascinated with how they were able to strategize and move without, of course they didn't have cell phones, they didn't have GPS. Often they had a low level of reading, and I don't know how they were able to do all of that, but I do know that in a short period of time, there were just remarkable changes made in society that benefited everyone. So I guess what I'm saying is that Black history is American history because it's all intermingled, and this game I like to think of as helping us celebrate our common country, the beauty of it, and the idea of making it a more perfect America. But the thing about Slang-A-Lang is that the focus is language, and as opposed to if you were reading a book and it is telling you, unwinding everything, or looking at a movie, instead you see words on a card, and each of those words are packed with stories. For example, as you can see, it has some elements of bingo because it looks very much like a bingo card, and instead of B-I-N-G-O, it says B-L-A-C-K. And instead of numbers, it has various words that were either coined or assigned new meaning or popularized by Black people on this journey from the 1930s through the 1980s. And that was one of the most transformative eras in modern history, as we know, because that's when World War II occurred and when people came out of their prior locations, and they got a taste of what the world looks like and what the country looks like. It just even stirred more interest and energy around wanting to be more, to do more, to give their kids more, and to fit in more.
Yeah. Beautiful. I have to show this so that it could be captured on camera. The
Right.
packaging is absolutely beautiful. But,
Thank
you
you.
know, we can certainly get into this a little further so that you can teach me how, one, to play the game, and also the importance of slangs and languages within a certain period of time. You can say even now there are new slangs being developed, right? And maybe you can find those slangs in future editions of Slang-A-Lang. But I do want to talk about your background a little bit.
All right, and then we'll come back.
Yes.
All
Yeah.
right.
How did you get here? Your upbringing? Are you a Kansas City native or?
I'm a Kansas City Kansan,
Okay.
born and reared in Kansas City, Kansas. Proud to have graduated from Sumner High School, which enjoys such a high ranking on the national scale. It did then, it does now. It's had some very, very prestigious and successful people who are among the graduates. So that's always something. I'm a KU graduate, and I'm also an MU graduate at the master's level. But how I got here with this was back when this is the third edition of this game. The first one was 1969, and it was in the wake of Dr. King's assassination. Back in those days, everybody seemed to belong to groups, maybe several, a social club, a social civic club, a lodge, a fraternal organization, and almost everyone went to church back then too. And we were just really focused on the idea of education being a way out of poverty and actually into the middle class. So we always kept that in our minds. And in these organizations and in these clubs, we always wanted to include something at this season of the year from now through Christmas to do for someone else. And of course, there we'd go again, wanting to do something for kids. So in one of these groups, we wanted to give book scholarships to graduating students. We were just young professionals, young careerists, young people starting out. We didn't have any money. But if we pooled it, we would be able to buy a respectable number of books for book scholarships for these students. And so what we'd do was we'd have an annual dance. And back then, dance was a noun as well as a verb. It was a place to go, a place and be seen and to see. So that was a dance. And we were having this, and we'd often have light hors d'oeuvres, and then and a DJ. And in the middle of it, kind of like intermission, we'd have some form of entertainment. So this was, I guess, this time of year in 1969. And we decided that although we were still just distraught, and of course the country was kind of up in arms and wondering about directions and thinking just lots of things rolling over in our minds, but we decided that we were going on with this event. And somehow I was assigned to come up with something for that period, that intermission. And I thought, I'm in graduate school and I'm about to finish this degree. My woman who had been my college roommate my first year said, that's tough, everybody's got something going, get to it. So my husband and I were members of another group, and that group played Rummy Royale. It was a board game, and sometimes we'd play Pokina, and on a Saturday evening, and we'd host, whoever was the host would have a nice dinner and all. So games were in my mind, and so it wasn't a hard leap for me to go from a board game to something else. And so I decided that maybe I'd just take off on something like this, and that what I would do was to just take a snapshot of where we are. And in the center, instead of having Slang-A-Lang then, it said, we're beautiful people. And there are 84 words on the cards always. And around it, I organized things that we aspired to, we'd overcome. We have a dream, and keep the faith and hope, and just everything that might come to your mind in that. And we were affirming our position. And back then, even, one of the words was natural, for the hair to be released from having to use all the chemicals, et cetera, and just let it be, because back then, of course, you could do that on the weekend, or you could wear an Afro wig, or you could do something, but you were not going to the office with your hair in these ways. And then I looked at our clothing, I looked at our music. We were so talented, and jazz has been there, and Kansas City has been a jazz mecca. And they often think of it as being one of the mothers of jazz, one of the forerunners of jazz. And so I put in some of that. One of the things I admired most about the journey was, although it was fraught with struggle, with segregation and Jim Crow, the people always kept a joy that allowed them to do other things. Never just poor me, but doing other things. And among the other things they did were like Bid Whiz. They played that. They enjoyed listening on the radio at that time, before everybody got TVs, to boxing. And I noticed it's making a recurrence. You notice that?
It is.
And I wrote in, there was a pool table. And I think for the men, it was more than just pool. I think it was a camaraderie, kind of, and where they stopped and talked and competed and rehashed and all. And then there's Hood, the Hood. And sometimes when I look at that Slang-A-Lang, I have to say something, because I don't want the focus to be just slang, a language. Maybe I couldn't figure what else back then to call it, but it was a particular way, and it was to really say that these are unique expressions rather than slang, because when you think slang, it needs to change. But these words are classics. They're burned into not just our psyche, but they've gone mainstream. And many times, the origin, and I won't push that too hard, but I do know that they were in great use in our community, like "What's up?" and like "Give me five." Before everybody was high-fiving, I had traced that all the way back to 1923. And then who hasn't heard someone say "cool"?
Right.
And so there are just a number of things. And rap we just celebrated, I think, the 50th anniversary of hip-hop, and rap was kind of the language of it. So I had all of these things in it, and graduate and drop out. Also had welfare, because remember I told you that this period was from the 1930s to the 1980s. And of course, we know that's when President Roosevelt had to do something, because the banks had failed. And the economy was just topsy-turvy. There were no jobs, and at one time during that 10-year period of that depression, I guess about 51% of black people were out of work, and a huge number of whites. And so he had to bring in welfare and job programs like the CPA, WPA, I guess it was, and a number of job programs to get people on their feet, and so that they wouldn't all have to be in food kitchens, that they would have courage and confidence and get everything going again.
Right.
So it's fun, because some of the words are fun, like the gold tooth, and there's some hard words in it, like march. And in it, I did not tell you that there's a glossary that comes with it.
Is that right? Okay.
A little glossary that comes with it. And it's just very brief by intent. And
The glossary is?
The glossary is very brief. The words, it gives you a simple definition of each of these 84 words. And the reason is, I am not trying to persuade anyone about any of the history. rather to encourage and inspire them to read, to do research, to do critical thinking. There's civil rights in here, but I want to go back to March. In the glossary, I don't know whether it's under L or A. I don't have it
Let's
right
see.
here in front of me, but there are 3 marches specifically that are mentioned.
I see March here.
March, okay. Do you see the dates?
Yes, May 2nd, 1963, and August 28th, 1963.
Okay, do you see the Children's March?
Yes, that's May 2nd.
Okay, that's May 2nd, and so that came before the big march on Washington, that Dr. King's March. Well, the Children's March touches me every time because the March for Freedom and the quest for freedom, and the taste doesn't go away. I guess to want to be free is just to be human. And we'd already come through the war and had seen other parts of the country, seen how it was possible to live. And people were marching, and sometimes there was a little conflict about it with your job. I don't know whether, for many reasons. But the children who didn't have any jobs from which to be fired decided that they would like to have the Children's March. They did in Birmingham, and that was one of the turning points in the civil rights movement of the 60s. And that was because they were dressed so nicely and behaving well and marching and just quietly. And all of a sudden, the water hoses were turned on them as well as dogs. So by then, people had television sets, and the suburban women thought, this is enough. We can't go any farther than this. And that was one of the big turning points in the civil rights movement, but that was the Children's March. And we all are kind of familiar with the March on Selma, Bloody Selma, so the date is there for that.
Yes,
and the
I saw
March
that.
on Washington is there for that. And the March on Washington is very interesting to me because it says to me that people who used and operated on some of these words that may not be exactly perfect English now, or the best ones to use to communicate, somehow they were able to communicate and form allies across the various faith organizations with legislators, and to move us from where we were then to where we were in 54, from 30 to 54, when the school, Brown versus Brown, to desegregate the schools, that was 20-some years. And then from there to the civil rights movement, that was just 30 years. And so I didn't erase any of these words because they were good enough for them to communicate and to reach other people and for them to understand what it was that was our goal, to come together and have fun with us, because they came to the clubs, they came to soul food restaurants, they came to many things, and they exchanged pulpits with the churches sometimes. And so these were the people who forged and formed relationships that resulted in legislation and rights that we now enjoy, but they never did get to. And so to me, we're just beautiful people. I guess you can tell I'm kind of in awe of the people who trod that path. And yet, all at the same time, we're having fun. And there's beautiful and crib, and when sometimes they'd say bad when they meant good, and this is an old joke, and the people from my era and others have heard it many times. Back in that day, when, especially after these children we had that, we were invited to just cross-culturally, have little coffees and just talk about the direction that we'd like to see for our country. And one day, at the end of such a talk, a kind of a sizable man said, well, it's been nice. I'm on my way to get in my crib now. And so I thought, So he went on down. He had the most beautiful, beautiful car. And when he stepped into it, somebody else said, that's a bad car. Well, there again, there. So it takes you to, makes you wonder why people were switching, if you're a young person, others know probably, why they were changing the meaning of words and putting words together in a different cadence and in a different unique kind of expression, like come on with it. Well, what does that mean? Why are people saying that? But we're wordsmiths, for one thing. We come from a rich oral tradition. I think we can trace all the way back to the motherland, perhaps. But sometimes you can't let everyone know what you're talking about if you're strategizing. And then sometimes you just need to say things that just are for you. There's no danger in it, no harm, but you just need it. And that's another thing that amazed me, Emmanuel, was how expressions could be heard here in Kansas City. Well, it seemed to me like on Monday, and by Thursday they were over the whole country. I have never understood how that happened because we did not have the means of communication that we do. And sometimes the words were changing rapidly. And they're strong words. There's power and there's passion in a lot of them. So sometimes I think if I were going a different way, I might not say slang-a-lang. I might say something else. But the words are there. There's power in words. There's fun in words. And if you consider that each of them could be a topic for study, for discussion, then it's a good thing. So there are a lot of fun things you can kind of look
I can
at.
certainly see.
Can you understand?
Yeah, but the origination of you being tasked to come up with something fun at that time later translated into what we see here now, and I think you're right. I mean, speaking a certain language and also being able to communicate and code. To later you find out that it has transcended beyond the state lines and it has crossed to different places, and it's still the same word. I mean, when you say bad and crib, I mean, these are words that are still being used to this day. Right. But I do, tells me a little bit about your character to some extent, where you kind of got bit by this bug of the codes of the language, how they came about and what meaning they're trying to transfer. In 3 iterations later, you're here. Tell me through that transition of from the first time that you thought this would be a good, fun thing to do for that moment to later having it as a full-blown project that turned into a business.
Well, that is very interesting, and as a student, you should even ask that, I think. What happened was amazing to me in a way, because I've done the little glossary, and I've done this with a person who likes to remain in the background, a very precocious teenager, and who was my son. And he knew some of these terms, and he was very interested in how they came about and everything. And so we better have definitions. And he said, we better go to the barbershop too. One of my brothers at that time, that was his first business, had a barbershop. And the men in there know everything. So it used to be called the Black City Hall, because they discussed everything in the barbershops. So, okay, we'll go over and we'll sit and listen, and then we'll hear words. And that's where we heard about burn, about cooking and what have you, because we knew some of that. And about proud and right on and the deuce of spades, just on, and pawn. And we kept coming back to these words have history. And they're here because, and they really describe something that's a part of the culture. And he said, oh, we better not, we thought, chitlins? Yes, well, it's in there, chitlins. Unless we forget that there was a time when we ate things that might have been thrown away, but they were a necessary part of the menu. And for many years, people kept doing that traditionally. And so we're to the point now that what used to be a throwaway or an easy to get soul food is now a delicacy because you can purchase, but you
Oh,
will
yeah.
pay dearly
Right.
at a restaurant for someone who's had to clean and prepare those. But to get back to that night, and there was in this group, it was a co-ed type group, I guess you'd say, but we were husbands and wives. And the man who was a caller, and I was a caller, and we called alternately, he was a speech and hearing specialist. And as he would call out soul food and red dress, etc., and people, and the more we called, the more they got into it because they were just thinking, all of these things as we were taking a snapshot from who we were and where we were and where we wanted to go because all the words fit into that. And so as the night ended, people started tipping up to us asking, where could they get this?
Oh, wow.
Oh, where? What? What?
Right.
And they became so persistent, and some of them were our friends. So here we were on our dining room table trying to make copies of these. And I was telling you that we were a part of a group who played board games once a month. So, and I'm a teetotaler, not to criticize anybody who isn't. But it was, I guess, game night, and I had worked so hard with a real job, really, and then doing this to accommodate people who were asking, and I kept falling asleep. And the host asked, what's wrong? And when I told him what I was doing, he said, you can't do this. You can't just keep making games and giving them to people. And he was a state legislator. And he said, and he and his wife are the hosts, and he said that when I go back to Jefferson City, I'm going to speak with one of my colleagues whose family has a toy making company out in western Kansas. And that's what he did. And I know his family, I'm going to call his family so they'll hear it. His name was the Honorable Earl D. Pitts. Earl D. Pitts. He made a remarkable contribution to our community. He was a businessman. He was just a good friend, lots of things. So the man said, oh, I like this. And I think my company would like to produce some. And you need to go to a patent attorney. So he sent me to the patent attorney that I used here recently. And they were amazed. Here she comes back after 50 years to do something about her trademark. At that time, there was a magazine called Ebony and one called Jet. Have you heard of those?
Yes.
Okay, well, they had spotters in cities, and whenever something that they thought was, that the spotter thought was really interesting, different or something, they would notify Johnson Publishing in Chicago. So we look up, and at our door is someone coming to interview me. Furthest thing from my mind. And so I ended up with 3/4 of a page in the Jet magazine about this game. So there was a comedian whose name was Dick Gregory, very well known at that time, and he had a store in New York. There was Macy's here, it's still here. Katz drugstore, there were bookstores, and then there were churches. And they were writing to get the game because the churches were doing it because, and these were white churches as well as black churches, but especially white ones, because they were tutoring the children. All of us were tutoring. We were tutoring too, but everybody was pitching in. We wanted to come together and make this a big, beautiful place, look kind of like we did at the March on Washington, all of us together doing things. And so they were saying that at the tutoring sessions, sometimes they were speaking 2 languages and seldom did the 2 meet. And they thought the game would help break down some of the terminology. And not only that, but it would open the children up to share with them what some of the words meant, and they would be. So I kept some of those letters. And I still have order forms from Macy's. I still have from Katz Drugstore, which was one of the biggest ones here, and from just different places all around. Right. And so we thought, now, I don't know how far we're going with this, And there was a fantastic organization here, and it was called the Black Economic Union. And it was founded by Jim Brown, the football player, and Curtis McClinton, who was a football player, and he was a chief, but he's still alive, still here. And they awarded people a Manufacturer of the Year award annually. So we get the call. So we got the Manufacturer of the Year award. And so Jim Brown wanted to talk with me about making it a full-time effort. Well, I was not about to leave my career on one product, on one thing that wasn't the intent in the first place. I wanted to help with this history. I still do. I have a passion for it, but not to sacrifice everything. And I knew not to even look at my husband about him leaving his. So we didn't, and so we kind of, just let it die out. And another reason we let it die out was because we were really making advances, in the 60s. By then we had the promise of some of the civil rights legislation. We had the Voting Rights Act, that came in the 60s. We had the fair housing that came in. And so we were doing okay. And so we just kind of let it go. Well, toward the end of the 80s, we were getting stirrings. And I guess the best way to describe it is to reference Mrs. Coretta Scott King in her book, My Life with Martin Luther King Jr. And in it, she expresses that freedom has to be won, earned and won, every generation. There's never a time when a freedom is protected for always. Each generation has this, and this is something we have not told our children enough, nor the older people for that matter. So we must renew and recommit and keep going. And so by 1986, we were starting to lose some of the gains. By the middle 1980s, well, 86 and on, some of the gains we'd made. And I guess one of the things that really comes to people's mind, and I don't want to be political, is that the gutting of the Voting Rights Act, that when you say that comes to people's mind. So that was an example. So people were saying, where's that game? Where's that game that we can play with each other, multi-generationally, multicultural, and just talk about this? Because there are a lot of people in all the cultures and persuasions who they don't want us to go back. We want to fulfill this dream of a better and a more beautiful America. So I thought, now I'm not sure I'm doing this again. So the woman who came with me, who's been with me all the time since 1986, when I decided maybe I'll do this again. I thought I'd just put my toe in the water and see what was going to happen. And I was at that time able to do just a few. And she was the president. Her name is Roxanne Johnson, very accomplished, brilliant woman. And she was the president of the Negro Business and Professional Women's Club for the area. And she was going to a regional meeting in, I know it was in Texas. And she said, let me take a couple and show it to the people. They were coming from 7 states. So it became a fundraiser. And so she and I thought we were on the right track. It was well received, and we stayed out there with it for a while. And then I just let it go. In 2017, people started talking about it again. And I started thinking, this is the first time in my life that I ever had really the time to devote to it. So I need some kind of sign if I'm going to do this. And I didn't know whether I would, but the sign that really resonated with me was there was a young woman, her name is Valerie. She, in conversation, said, I've been thinking about you, and I wanted to tell you that all I wanted for my birthday was the Slang-A-Lang game. And I said, Slang-A-Lang? She said, so how'd that happen? What do you mean? So she said, well, in our church meeting, we said we were going to have a little social event during the holidays. And one of the women said she was going to bring a game. And she brought it. She said, we had so much fun playing Slang-A-Lang and hearing someone call out Cadillac and just a number of things that were even, and Sugar Hill, and just things that were even status symbols to us back at that time, and us birthday, what we considered a holiday, and the black church, which was a mainstay and continues to be for some, and holds a special position in this particular game. And she said, I was so intrigued, I want that game. So I told my husband, and she said he started looking for it for me. And he found it on eBay. And it just broke his heart to tell me that he was not paying $120 for it.
Wow.
So I said, how much? So she said, $120 for it. So.
How much were you selling it at the time?
At the time, well, I wasn't even selling it then, but I had never sold it for more than $25.
Right.
And so it is it's a premium collectible. And right after that, and I said, oh, I'm so sorry, if I had any more, I'd give you one, and I would have. And so then someone calls me, because we hear that we're thinking about Slang-A-Lang again. Your game is on the Australian Etsy for 185 American dollars. I said, really? Yeah. So I knew I was coming here. So I decided to look on eBay 2 days ago, Wednesday, and there are 2 copies of it. One is $49 and the other one is $120. So it's a collectible.
It is, especially the older versions, right?
The older one, as well as now the one that was on, I think, on the Australian Etsy was the middle one.
Right.
The classic one. That was the original, then the classic, and this is the Legacy edition. This is the one that I think contains the words that are going to be with us because they have been mainstreamed. We've been cultural leaders in so many areas of life. And language is one. We come up with terms, and they come from the heart, they come from experience, sometimes from struggle, sometimes from great joy, and they're just so relatable and repeatable, but before you know it, it's just gone mainstream, and then no one knows how it came about. Sometimes it's that way with words and songs. The songs that originated in our culture, they go that way too.
Right.
And sometimes customs. We seem to be leaders in so many ways, sometimes the fashion. And the one that really comes to mind lately is the Crown Act. Has to do with the Crown Act. Do you know what that is?
No, ma'am.
Okay. It is the ability to wear your hair the way you like in the workplace without being penalized, without being sent home. It passed, and so that act passed in the House of Representatives. The act did, but not in the House. There was a filibuster there. But in some of the municipalities and states, they're gradually enacting that. And I bring it up not just because people are wearing their hair in the twist and the locks and the braids, etc., but can you see how it's crossed over? If you haven't, look, and you'll see people on TV who have they don't want the chemicals in their hair either, so you just see it and it's style. So really our culture has been one of enrichment. We've made many contributions, and sometimes you hear of the things that are tangible, that you can touch and feel, that we invented this, that, and the other, are ascended to a certain position. But we've said some things that seem to me to be in our culture and ingrained in the greater culture, and well, I guess it's in the nomenclature of people in the mainstream conversations that are here. So that's why I'm calling it the legacy. And there was something I mentioned a while ago, that back in that day, no matter how many things you belong to, how many dances you went to or how late the dance was on Saturday. You went to church on Sunday. And the black church has been greatly revered because it's not only been a place of worship and a place of reverence and a place of refuge, but back in the day when marches were, I guess, even more frequent, because you're seeing them now here in other countries and other places and for other reasons, but sometimes the march had gone as far as it was going to be allowed, and the word was go home or go to your church. And the church was there, and you were there because the church was where people not only went to renew their strength for the week, but it's also where you went to discuss ways and means and strategies and that kinds of things. And sometimes there was someone at the door. But as you're talking now, sometimes people don't know what you're talking about in these words that you're using and everything. But it was the black church who led the collaboration with the interfaith communities and with people of goodwill, and who gained so many white allies to help us from where we were to where we are and where we're going. And that is to be honored, in my opinion, and to be treasured and to be passed on. And I'm thinking that right now, as we're looking again to how the ways that we are going to keep our history alive, and even the part that some may want to erase, I think I'm hearing rumblings that the black church will probably be talking with the children and with each other and with people in other cultures about this America that we all love and our place in it, and how we want to fulfill that promise of making it a beautiful place. And to show you how much I revere that, the last spot, this is what we're calling this is the board when you shake up the pieces and pull out one, and you call maybe, what is that, a man, and you cover it. The last space on here is the black church, and to me, and it's intentional, as if to say we've moved, we kept the faith, we have hope, we still do, amen.
Oh, wow.
So the black church is there for that reason. And I think one of my favorite words in the game is hope, and that is the belief that that which is sought will happen, like the right to vote and educational and business opportunities.
Beautiful. It's incredible. I think you're taking me on a trip here.
I hope.
As we were discussing, is it safe for me to assume that it starts in the 1930s and ends in the 80s, or is this a preservation of that era within these words? Or do you think this can transcend beyond that time?
I think it's timely, I think it's timeless, and I think it's relevant today. Because when you look at, as I was saying, graduate, and just think of the implications of that now. Remember all the student loan debts? When you think graduate and people start to look at it as a study topic, do you think people might start to make other plans for continuing their education, whether it's online or whatever, that the community together may find more ways that are affordable for people to get the education that is suitable to this day? Does everybody need 4 years? What do you need? And this is what all I'm doing is saying what educate means is to complete what you start at the community college, at the collegiate level, whatever it is, or even maybe we may go back to trade schools. I don't know. But all I'm saying is that the word is worth checking into, looking into, and it should be not just a discussion topic, but it's worthy of research so that we don't find ourselves here again with a massive student loan debt and not knowing how to deal with it. So what does that say to you? Every one of the words, I think, Has that kind of, and then soul is one of the words, soul. Long ago, that just meant that part of you that never died. But who does not know what we're talking about when we say that's soulful? And who doesn't hear that all the time, even in the slogan, let's heal the soul of the nation. And back then we talked about a soul brother, talked about a soul sister, and they didn't need to look like you or me. It was anybody of goodwill who was hoping to screw the same values. That's a soul brother, that's a soul sister. And then the soulful music, whatever. So how did this happen? So I'm hoping that they will look. And what was the rap? Don't lose your thought. What was rap really? What were those young men saying? What were they conveying? And what, 50 years later, what were they conveying when they celebrated the anniversary last year? And on and on. So every word to me is worthy of critical thinking.
Yes.
And just use it like a study. And so the game is reusable.
Right.
And you can't exhaust it within a little bit. So no, it's not, indeed not confined to those years, nor am I trying to ever upgrade or change the words. I'm not trying to update the slang. Somebody always says, well, don't you think you ought to update it? No, I don't. No more so than I think you should update any other book that like says the history of World War II. You don't go in there and start changing, so I don't think I should change it. But I think it's relevant. Do you think the words are relevant?
I do think the words are absolutely relevant. And then I mentioned a few of them as well as a bad. You said that it is a, to describe something that's good, but you're using the word bad.
Yes.
But it is still being used to this day, right? You still find it. But
yes.
It is inclusive, is what you're saying. It's not
Yes.
exclusive to the Black culture, right?
Oh, no, it's for everybody. Our whole Black history is American history. I preach it all the time. You cannot separate the two. They are concurrent. We're making history together right now at this minute, and we've been doing that ever since we set foot on this soil, ever since we were brought to the soil. We've been making it, and we're going to continue to make it. And together we're going to shape what our country is to be and what our dreams are, what our aspirations are. We're far more alike than we are different.
For
sure. I just see it as something to kind of organize your thought and to laugh a little bit as you go and look at some of the words that are on here.
Right.
I saw some people flinch as we were calling, and when it said cat daddy, you know, it's like you're telling family secrets. I didn't erase any of the history.
Right.
I left it alone. If I could say one last thing, one other thing about it, is that I'm really proud of how our culture was able to be translated into helpful events. For example, we had a lot of the younger people, I think, feel that the marching started with the Women's March or the marches that they see on TV, and that some of the other strategies that we use to gain freedoms, we were able to help other people see how to express themselves and how to ask for what they need to be free. Again, it's just human nature to be free. And the marching with the LGBT community. And so a number of things that we've done have been adopted and mainstreamed and utilized by other people to seek the same goals that we had to fight and struggle to seek so that we could overcome. And then we've also helped in Africa with some to translate and some of these practices to there. So I think we have so much to be proud of, and I still say we are beautiful people.
Absolutely.
And I am just really proud, and I thank you so very much for the opportunity to just talk with you about this.
It's absolutely a pleasure with me. It's been some time in the coming as well, so I'm so glad that we were able to do this. Where can this could be found?
Please, I'd like people to go to slang-a-lang.com.
Okay. Slang-A-Lang.com.
Right. Then they can just all run together, slang-a-lang.com,
.com.
and they can purchase it there.
Purchase it, it will be delivered to them.
Yes, it
Okay.
will. It'll be shipped to them. And there's one local place
Yes.
that it can be purchased, and that's at Willa's Books and Vinyl. And she is at,
Her location? I'll definitely have it on the description.
okay,
Don't worry,
put it
don't
on
worry about
there.
it.
And then the other place is, we're coming up on Small Business Saturday,
Okay.
which is November the 30th. And if they look on my website, they'll see exactly where we are exhibiting in Houston.
Okay.
It's going to be at Cookies and Cocoa, a beautiful boutique
Yes.
that's held there. And this is their second year hosting it, and my second year participating. So if they'll go there and look, I'd appreciate it. They can follow me on Facebook too.
On Facebook as well.
On
No,
Facebook.
definitely. I think this is great, and I just picture the perfect gift for your parents or grandparents, and then you open it up and you start having discussions. And I think history has always been transferred. One of my favorite things about my father was the history that he used to tell me about my grandparents, right? And some of the things that happened around that time. So imagine if you can pick a word and just have a discussion for 10 minutes about it, and
Yes.
what that looks like to them, what that looked like to them at the time, what it means to them today, and what they would expect from the current generation to pass on to the next one. So this is absolutely beautiful. It was a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you. Can I tell you just one more thing?
Sure.
This is a 3-round game.
Okay.
The first one is played where you'd shake up and cover what's called.
Okay.
We found that the young people, and we've played with them, they want you to call from the glossary.
Oh, really?
Call the definition. Like under that L, it says
Right.
man, but maybe I'm not sure if it's L.
the L?
But anyway, I mean, it may not be under L, but anyway, it's man. And when
Okay.
you're calling from the, I'll just pretend it is L.
Okay.
And then I would say a male, a human being. And then they look on their card under that L, and they see man.
I see.
And
they mark
that's the way they want to play it.
To play it, okay.
And then the third round is when you've played as much as you want to, or just stop every now and then. What word would we like to talk about? And so they just stop and talk. And they usually will have some lemonade or something.
Or maybe a little
finger
stronger
food.
than that.
Right, especially the older generations, because it has a good vibe.
Right.
And there's a woman who's in her 70s, and she plays it by herself once a week and just enjoys listening to the words and remembering.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's something stronger than that. People are just playing, they're just thinking and remembering.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Thanks so much, Irene.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.